Hey, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining the call today. For anyone I haven't met, I'm Brittany Whitmire, the Microsoft Account Manager for Education in North Carolina. I've worked with you guys, and many of you have already worked with our partner network over the years. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to two great partners, and they're going to lead this discussion. Tom from Adobe is on the phone. Tom is the digital practice lead, and he manages. He's the digital practice lead for Adobe Document Cloud. He focuses exclusively on Adobe Sign and helping customers solve their digital transformation initiatives and challenges. Also from Adobe is Alyssa Fairchild, who's the account development manager for Adobe Sign, and Matt Johnson, who's a senior solutions consultant focused on Adobe Sign and integrations, including Microsoft. Joining Adobe is one of our great system integrator partners, Breakpoint Technology. I've known and worked with the folks from Breakpoint Technology for many years, and they've had great success helping our customers develop solutions all across the Microsoft platform, both on-premise and in the cloud. The Breakpoint Technology team has worked with Sharepoint since it was first introduced as a platform, and their deep experience as a Microsoft partner, as well as the consistent effort they put in finding the right solution to fit customer needs, makes them a great fit for our webinar today. So we have Judy, Greg, Jessica, and they'll be providing a brief look at enhancing your Adobe Sign story with Office 365 and Microsoft Flow. So why are we doing this today? Well, as many of you guys may have seen, this past fall's announcement, Adobe and Microsoft established a strategic working partnership across the globe. So Adobe is the preferred e-signature product across the entire Microsoft suite, including our Office 365 platform, SharePoint Flow, as well as Dynamics. So this alliance and integration is really bringing great value to my customers as well as Microsoft customers across all industries. And with that introduction, I want to turn the phone over to Tom and let him jump right in. Tom, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
And thanks. My name's Tom Bernevich, and I'm the digital practice lead for Adobe's Document Cloud for state and local government and higher education. And I'd like to start off today with just a statement. And the statement is, going digital is not optional in the 21st century. So if you think about that, we've been in the computer age for a long time now. And it's amazing that with all the technology that's there, we really haven't been able to get it to transform digital transformation and digital workflows across existing manual processes. And so when you've hired your employees, you've hired them based on experience and based on their training and their education, right? Whether they have an undergrad or a master's degree, they've been hired for a certain reason. But unfortunately, a certain part of their day is allocated to administrative, mundane processes. So if we can buy back that time and give them the ability to better interact with themselves and others in more compelling ways, whether it's inside the enterprise or outside the enterprise, that's when your organization starts to perform at peak efficiency. So everybody's drowning in paper. Everybody faxes things. Everybody scans documents, prints documents out, sneaker nets them across the office, puts them in the mailbox, whatever it is, and it's a very inefficient process. So if you think about digitizing this workflow and getting organizations and peers to collaborate on these digital workflows together in parallel or sequential, you can see the opportunity to gain efficiencies. It's the year 2018, and unfortunately, 80% of all of our document processes still rely on paper. So the opportunity in front of us is to carve out as much of that 80% and digitally transform documents and workflows to gain more efficiencies across your organization. So in 15 years, there's a study that's been done. It says in 15 years, 50% of all U.S. universities will be in bankruptcy. So what does that mean? We have shrinking enrollment at the universities. That means it's going to be survival of the fittest. All universities must become more efficient, invest in things that will return greater return on investment, and and hopefully get above that 50% line and be in the survival column. We're also entering the age of Generation Z. So the millennials are past this, and now we're looking at high school seniors. And studies show that 60% of all high school seniors are more likely to consider institutions that use cool things and digital strategies, right? So this group of children that are becoming adults have grown up using smartphones. Previous generations may have dabbled in smartphones and cell phones, and generations before them didn't have any of this. So the expectation for this group that is entering the university system is that they want to enter a system that's cool and kind of looks like the environment in which they grew up in. So they're really going to challenge the universities to develop digital strategies. We talk about Adobe Document Cloud. It's really about Acrobat and Adobe Sign. Everyone's used Acrobat over the last 25 years. In fact, Acrobat is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And we are the founders of the PDF environment and have been working with documents for a long time. Adobe Sign is what we're going to concentrate on today. Adobe Sign has web and mobile apps, as well as application program interfaces, or APIs, and a robust set of integrations. So when we talk about the life cycle of a document, whether it's manual or digital, somebody creates a document, they collaborate with people or organizations, and then they execute upon that document. Today's environment, as we've just talked about a couple times, is very cumbersome. But when you get into the digital environment, you can create a document as simple as using the Adobe Scan app, which is an app for your smartphone. It's a free download. I encourage you to try it out. You can scan a piece of paper, and that can be the creation of a document in the digital workflow. You can also create documents out of Microsoft Office, other paper docs, existing PDFs, or just fillable forms. You can also have systems of record generate documents that start the process. So what we do digitally is we can collaborate with other individuals. We can do it on an ad hoc basis where I can just send someone an email out of Outlook and send a document for signature or have a form filled out via Adobe Sign through Microsoft Outlook. It can be a structured, pre-built workflow whereby individuals are identified in the process that could be either sequentially advanced of the document, or it can be a parallel advancement of the document with many individuals approving, signing, etc. along the way. It can be fixed routing. It can be automatic and flexible. It can have conditional logic, which means it's a more advanced type of workflow, or it could have pre-qualified logic. All these opportunities are available for you in the digital world. And then at the end, what you need to do on that document, someone needs to sign it, acknowledge it, approve it, etc. And then that document is stored back in the system of record, perhaps, or in a predetermined document folder. It could be a document cloud. It could be document management systems. It could be Box. It could be other enterprise systems, or back in the system of record, as I mentioned. So Adobe Sign, when coupled with workflows, creates hundreds of opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, an Adobe Sign consumer or signor can also be a form filler, an approver, an acceptor of an agreement, or a certified recipient. It might be a certified recipient for a policy change that needs to go out to the entire organization. And we have an opportunity within Adobe Sign to send one form that is a policy change, perhaps, that needs to be acknowledged by every individual in the organization. It could be thousands of individuals. It could be done with the Mega Sign feature, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Think about the opportunities. When we talk about pre-existing partnerships and ecosystems, it's a who's who world out there. We'll talk about Microsoft in a minute. So if you put that aside, we integrate with many of the who's who back-end enterprise systems across corporate enterprise, education enterprise, and state and local government enterprise, including Workday, Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, et cetera, Banner is another one, Oracle. And if your integration of choice is not up here, we provide a very robust API to allow you to connect into that back-end system. When we talk about the Microsoft partnership, Brittany mentioned at the top of this webinar, Adobe and Microsoft have been partners for years, as have a lot of other companies. However, in September of last year, Adobe and Microsoft came together at the CEO level. The CEOs happen to be personal friends that went to school in the same village in India, years ago, and they came together and said, hey, let's create some synergies for our customers and really give them more value than the two of us individually tied together. So they came back and said, listen, let's make Adobe Sign the preferred electronic signature option across the entire enterprise system of Microsoft. And Adobe, on the flip side, said, hey, we're going to provide Azure Cloud as the preferred cloud environment for all Adobe Sign initiatives. So it's a very synergistic relationship. And additionally, this relationship is shared at the developer level. The developers of Microsoft and the teams at Adobe get together and they collaborate. They share 5-year plans so they know where each technology is going. They incorporate new technology so that they can stay lockstep as their journey continues. Specifically, Microsoft, we can, as Brittany said, we can integrate natively within the application without having to leave the application with Dynamics, SharePoint, Outlook, which is the entire Office 365 suite, Microsoft Flow, and Teams. And so what this allows you to do is to speed up processes and get your electronic forms and documents signed and filled out in a very expeditious manner without having to leave the current Microsoft environment. We talk about just a few of the opportunities for this within the education market. How many students do you lose to the cumbersome financial aid filling out process? Using Adobe Sign, you can speed up that process, and I can see your wheels turning right now. You're thinking about how this might be deployed within your environment. Course ad drops can be as simple as hanging a fillable form for an ad drop off of an intranet site or some other portal within your organization. A student can click on the form, download the form, fill in the various information, sign it, and send it off, and it'll be sent to the necessary person's inbox or even in their file cabinet. Vendor contracts, we'll talk about that in a second. Very cumbersome process that oftentimes takes weeks. How many of you have tried to track down a signature and not really know where it is? Using Adobe Sign, you can track the progress along the way. You can see status, and you can see who opened it at what time, at what IP address if you need to. HR forms, think about the process of onboarding. It's a very cumbersome, time-inefficient environment that employees oftentimes enter into an organization with a bad taste in their mouth just because the onboarding process took so long. If we take the example of drafting an offer letter, and the different colors represent different individuals within the department or organization, and the key is up at the top right, and you'll see how it's a very sequential manual process today and often takes a long time to get approvals along the way. A typical drafting of an offer letter takes 24 total steps, 12 of which are manual. Now you take that to onboarding, which includes drafting of the offer letter, and getting the necessary approvals and awareness along the way. For example, IT provisioning, HR benefits. All these people could be involved in a predefined workflow that is done in a sequential manner in a relatively short time in 7 total steps, 0 of which are manual. And I won't go through this, but this is an example of the supplier agreement that we talked about earlier. Very cumbersome, very long process that takes weeks. You can do this using Adobe Sign in a matter of hours or a day or so, using 7 steps, none of which are manual. The benefits: improve employee experiences along the way, improve efficiencies of individuals and professionals working with one another and collaborating, increase productivity. Let's talk about compliance. How many of your steps in your organization have some sort of compliance audit, and you're scrambling at the last minute when you know the compliance audit is coming and you're looking for certain documents to make sure that you don't fail in your department? Adobe Sign will help with that. And as I mentioned earlier, we can gain visibility and see an audit trail of the document along the way from its creation to when it's opened by any individual along the way with associated IP address and the time of day. Forrester came out with a report that says, on average, using Adobe Sign, documents are signed 21 times faster than the manual process. A lot of hours saved, and the ROI accompanies those 2 productivity savings. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Alyssa Fairchild, to do a demo of Adobe Sign to show you how this thing really works. Alyssa?
Thanks, Tom. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Are you able to see this Adobe Sign dashboard here?
In a minute, it's still churning.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, you can see it. Okay, great. So when you first log into Adobe Sign, this is the dashboard that you're going to see. And from Adobe Sign, from this dashboard, you're going to be able to launch into everything that you might need to do. So you can send a document for signature. You can manage those documents that you've sent for signature. So see where they are along in the process. Generate reports around those documents. Maybe you have different reports that you want to create for different departments and different workflows. You can do all that from here. So when we first send a document for signature, we have a couple of different options. We can either click here in the Send tab, we can click Get a Document Signed, or if I have something saved as a template within my library, I can actually just launch that from here. So today I'm going to go ahead and launch this I-9 sample form that I have here, and we'll go ahead and click Start. And from here, I can type in the recipient address. And so I'm going to use one of my sample Gmail accounts that I have. And one of the options that I have is to change the recipient role. And so maybe they need to be a signer, maybe they just need to approve the document or accept it before it gets routed to the next person in the workflow. Maybe they need to be a certified recipient or a form filler or a delegator. So this person doesn't know, or I don't know who is the correct person for signature, so maybe I'll delegate it to Alyssa and then she can delegate it to the correct person. For the purposes of the demo, we'll just go ahead and make Alyssa the signer here. If I had a second recipient, I would go ahead and type that here, and so it would route from Alyssa to the next recipient. But for this particular document, it only requires one signature. And then over here, we also have different methods of authentication. So we can authenticate via email, or maybe you want to put a password protection on the document. You can do that as well. Maybe you want to authenticate via social, meaning that they need to log into any one of their social media accounts to confirm their identity. And then the last one would be a knowledge-based authentication. For today, we'll just go ahead and authenticate via email. And we'll scroll down here and we've got this message. We can personalize this message here if we'd like. So maybe if it's something that we've talked about earlier, I might want to say, hi, please sign this document that we discussed earlier. For today, we'll go ahead and just leave this generic message that we've got. Then we'll scroll down here and I want to preview and add signature fields. Next. We'll go here, and so now, since this document was already saved as a template, it's ready to go. But if any of these form fields hadn't been added yet, we could just use the simple drag and drop features over here. And so within the signature field, you can drag and drop a signature or an initial section. Within the signer info fields, you can drag and drop a title or a company, etc. And so maybe, for example, let's say I want to take out this section and I want to put in a date box. So again, just simple drag and drop. I can also ensure that these boxes are assigned to the correct person. So this particular form only needs one signature, but let's say that it had needed multiple people to fill this out. I could actually edit this and assign it to someone specific. I can also make these fields required or not required. So in the case of this form, I've just made a couple of the fields required since we want to kind of go through it pretty quickly. And so we'll scroll through here. Everything looks good. A couple other things that I wanted to call out is that you can add other data fields such as images. So if I dragged and dropped an image, the signer would need to upload whatever that image may be. Maybe it's a student ID, something like that. And then lastly, I can drag and drop, let's say, a file attachment. So maybe this document requires some other file to be attached to it before it's submitted. I could just drag and drop that onto here. So now that my form looks good and it's ready to go, I can go ahead and click Send for Signature. And so now this document has been sent to that Gmail account that I listed. And so I'll go ahead and now that's sending a document for signature. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you what it looks like to sign a document. So let's come over here into Adobe Sign and we'll refresh. And here it is. So as a signer of a document, you don't need to be logged into the portal of Adobe Sign. All you need is your email address and an internet browser. And so I'm going to go ahead and click into this email that I've received. And it says, please review and complete this I-9 sample form. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. It's going to launch into a separate browser. I received this message that says, please review and complete. So I'll close out of that. And now I'll get started. So I'll fill out my last name and my first name, and then I'll scroll through here. And the next required field is the signature of the employee. And so I'll go ahead and click into that. And when I'm signing the document, I have a few different ways that I can do that. I can either type my signature here like that, or I can draw my signature. There we go. I can upload an image. Maybe I've got a JPEG saved onto my desktop. I can actually just select there, drag and drop that image from the desktop and do it that way. And then the last option is to create my signature on a mobile device. And so I would send that a text message link to my phone. I could pop that open into a separate window, sign there, and it would auto-populate this section here. For the purposes of today's demo, I'm just going to go ahead and sign, there we go, and apply that signature. And so now you'll see that I've got my name and it's date stamped as well. And now that I've filled out all of the required portions, I can go ahead and click to sign. There we go. I have successfully signed the agreement. So now let's jump back over here into the Adobe Sign portal to see what it looks like to manage that document that I just sent. So within the Manage section, you're going to be able to see anything that is in a draft, anything that's currently out for signature, out for delivery, and anything that has been signed and completed. So over here on the right, I can see that the option to view it, to share it, to protect it, to remind me, or I can check out the history. And so over here in the history, this is the cool section where you can see at what time it was created, at what time it was sent for signature, at what time it was viewed, and when it was e-signed and completed. You'll also be able to download an audit report, so pop that open into a separate window. So every single document that is sent for signature is actually going to have this audit report attached to it. And so again, the audit report just breaks down everything that happened to the document from the time it was created through the time that it was completed. And we'll have the IP address of every person that was involved as well, so we can see all of that. So again, this is just to confirm the legality of it and authenticating everything. So we'll go ahead and close that. Just a couple other key things that I wanted to call out over here. So from the dashboard, I can go ahead and create a widget. I can send a document for MegaSign. So just to explain both of those, so a widget is a web-enabled form. And so essentially it's any document that maybe the signer needs to initiate rather than myself as the sender. And so when you create a widget, you will be able to place a web link onto your website, and let's say students or staff or anybody that needs to access that and launch that will be able to do so. And then the last thing is MegaSign, and MegaSign is the ability to send one document to many people at once. So let's say maybe you have an HR policy update that needs to go out to 200 employees. You can upload an Excel CSV file to here. And from there, you can include the names as well as the email addresses of all of those individuals, and you can send that agreement out to all of those people at once. And so that is the Adobe Sign dashboard. Tom, was there anything else that you wanted me to cover on this today?
No, other than you have the ability to customize your logo, and so you make the look and feel customized to your environment. Is really the only other thing. That's in the admin piece. So I think that's good, Alyssa. Thank you.
Great.
Hey, thanks, Alyssa. This is Judy from Breakpoint. We're going to go ahead and take over the share here. And we want to just briefly introduce who we are. Breakpoint has been involved in Microsoft technologies for many, many years. We've been, as Brittany mentioned earlier, we've been working with the Sharepoint form since it was first brought forward, and working specifically with education customers for much of our career. And so we're happy to work with all of you and helping you look at solutions. Jessica's example that she's going to show you in just a moment is going to help you look at workflows. Specifically, the example today is going to be looking at a student that wants to change their major, which I'm sure pops up occasionally for our friends in the university space. A lot of our background and a lot of the things that we work with our customers on is helping them with integrated portal solutions, collaboration strategies, enterprise budgeting for university medical centers, and then, of course, workflow and forms automation, which is what we're going to cover today. So, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go ahead and kick off the demo.
Okay, sure. Let me get started here. So we are going to start our demo in Sharepoint. So as Judy said, we have a student who wants to change their major. They have to submit the request to the advisor, and the advisor has to approve and sign for that request. So to get started, we're going to create a new item here in Sharepoint. Give me just a second. I'm on my documents instead of my list. So if I click new here, it's going to pop me up a new item where I can enter a student name. When I go to select the advisor, as I start to type, I will get a drop down to select from. I have a drop down here for the major. This is tied right now just to a static list, but it could be connected to any data source to fill in any values that we want there. So I'm going to save that item, and as I save that, the workflow is kicking off in the background. So the first thing that happens in our workflow is we get an email asking for that approval. So what I've got here is the advisor's email account. The approval has come through. It's got my information here. Anne wants to change her major. When I click the approve button, I am able to enter in a message if I want to, and then I can just hit submit. So this piece is coming from Flow. This is a Flow approval process. Once that approval goes through, I'll get the email from Adobe Sign to sign the request form. So while we're waiting for that email to come back through, I'm just going to flip back to my list real fast. And on this list, you can see the fields that we entered, and then we also have a status field. So it's showing the different status values of the submitted request. So if it's gone through the process and it's been signed, we can see that. If it's still working its way through, we can see that. I'm going to flip back over and see if I've got my email here. So here is the email that's come from Adobe Sign. If I click here, it's going to pull up my document. The document was built using a library template, and then it was pre-populated with the fields from the Sharepoint list item. So we have our student name, the major values, the advisor name, and then as the advisor, I'm going to go ahead and sign this. So I can fill my name in here and click apply, and then click sign. So that document has been signed. The workflow is continuing on, and if we flip back to our Sharepoint list and we go down to the item we were working on, we can see our history has come through. Let me do a refresh real fast so we can see the full process there. Well, it's still showing out for signature, but as that signature processes, we would see that document is signed and then that the workflow has completed. So that is the quick run through of what we have done with the workflow. And so I'm going to show you real quickly how that workflow was built. So what I'm showing now is Microsoft Flow. It is part of Office 365, and it is their tool for creating automated workflows. This workflow was set up to trigger when our item was created in Sharepoint. There are a number of different triggers that could be used if you wanted to tie to something besides Sharepoint. You can see the different status values writing in. Here in the purple one is our approval process. So that approval goes through once we get our response. If it's approved, we go down one side. If it's not, we go down the other. Once our approval goes through, then we can see right here the integration with Adobe Sign. So this piece is taking the data out of SharePoint, it's grabbing the template with Adobe and sending that email out for signature. Once that document has been signed, we grab that status, we can see it signed, and then we're checking again. If it's signed, yes, I'm going to grab that PDF and I'm going to save it to my SharePoint document library and also add it as an attachment. So let me flip back real fast just to show how we can see those documents in SharePoint. So if I pull up my item again, I can see now that the flow has completed processing, and I have my PDF attachment here, which is our signed document. If I go back again and I go into my document libraries, I have my change major library, and here is the same PDF with our signature. So that's just showing some different options of what you can do with that document once it has been signed. So if you are working in SharePoint or you're not, there's an option to put a form on top. So this is just a quick form. It has all the same information. It has the same drop down to pull the advisor. And when we submit that, it will kick off that same workflow process to run through.
So if anybody is interested in working with us and would like to follow up on this, we're actually offering out to everyone that we'll be glad to meet with you and walk through a half-day envisioning session to help you take a look at what workflows you're interested in, and take a look at what are the requirements around security, maintainability, complexity, and systems integration, because you've seen how seamless and easy it is to integrate with Adobe. There may be other systems that you'd like to integrate with as well for your workflow. And so we'd be happy to help you figure that out and take a look at what workflows could be automated and processes that are out there in your system. So Tom, I'm going to turn it back over to you to wrap up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Judy. Let me share my screen here. And I just want to go into a quick definition of how our offering is licensed without some details. Let's see here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So just to summarize, Adobe's been around for a long time. We've been the leader and the founder of the document process. We've had over 6 billion signatures, and just really have a high R&D budget, and are a very secure and compliant type of environment for your digital workflows and electronic signatures. As you know, electronic signatures are legally binding, and we are basically best in class within the enterprise system. And a transaction, this is really how we license our product. It's based on transaction. And so let me just define a transaction for you. It is really defined as a workflow that's kicked off that could be to 12, 15 people. It could have 12 to 15 documents on it for varying levels of work by each of the steps along the way, the people in the steps along the way. And once that document is done, completed, stored away in an electronic file cabinet, and returned back to the initiator of that workflow, that's considered one transaction. When you use MegaSign, Alyssa demoed how the MegaSign feature works. So if you want to send a policy update out to 250 people that need to understand and read the policy and acknowledge that they've read it, using a mail merge type of a CSV file, that is actually a transaction for each of the 250 people. So it's 250 total transactions. The widget, or the self-service model, is when an individual fills out a form that's pulled down off of a website and fills the form out and signs the form, that represents a transaction. So the way we license transactions within Adobe is You sign up for typically more than 5,000 transactions, and it's priced at a per transaction amount over the course of the year. And the unused transactions do not carry forward like you may have thought. And so I just wanted to describe that for you. If you have any other questions, please reach out to Brittany and or me. I am at bernetic@adobe.com. Tom Bernetich. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks, Judy, Jessica, Greg, everyone who joined. We really appreciate it. I will wrap this up, send out some slides, and look forward to continued conversations with these partners and with our customers.